Hi Year 12, so we're looking at Hamlet Act 4. We have just finished Act 5 where we've had Laertes come in and start a new cycle of revenge to mimic the cycle of revenge that Hamlet has been on since the beginning of the play. This is taking place in a different room in the castle with Horatio. So a servant comes in and says someone's here to speak with you, and then a sailor comes in and says I've got some letters for you, and then Horatio reads it. Now that is quite spectacularly interesting because it means that the letter that Horatio reads, which is where Hamlet tells us that the ship going to England has been attacked by pirates and he's been able to escape and get back to Denmark, it means that that action is reported. It takes place off stage. So that's one of the most significant moments in the play that doesn't happen on stage, so we don't get to see it. So this is pretty clearly a comment on the action versus inaction theme, and it shows that Hamlet has definitely decided to act on his resolution in his last soliloquy, where he decided that thoughts without action are meaningless. He needs to be decisive. But it's quite interesting that we don't get to see him being decisive, we just get to hear him talking about it, because it comes back to that whole words versus action thing. So even his actions are being shown to us through the filter of words. So you might want to think about what Shakespeare is saying there about words versus action. So basically, it just says that before the ship had been out for 2 days on the way to England, some very nasty pirates showed up. There was a battle between the two ships, and in the battle, Hamlet got onto the pirate ship, and then the pirate ship disengaged and went off, and so Hamlet became their prisoner. You'll notice that when he's talking about this, he's using, I might switch to red, hang on. He's using this language that is inclusive first-person language. So you can see that he considers himself part of the action here. So again, it's supporting his resolution that he isn't just going to talk and then think, he's going to act. So he refers to the pirates as thieves of mercy. So they treated him quite nicely. And then he goes on to say, what they did, I am to do a good turn for them. So they treated him nicely because he's going to give them money. Then he says, I've also sent some letters to the king. Can you make sure he gets them? And he says, can you come to see me with as much speed as you would fly from death? Which is quite interesting, considering that Hamlet has spent the first 2 acts really talking about how he is afraid to face death, but that he quite likes the idea of death, and that he admires the ability of other men to face death fearlessly, like Fortinbras' army. He admires that, so it's an interesting simile. I don't know if you need to include it in anything, I just think it's interesting. So then he says to Horatio that he has something really serious to tell him about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and about the situation on the ship, but it's too important to trust by writing it down. And then that's it. Horatio says that he will go and see Hamlet, and that's the end of scene 6. So it's short, sharp, and shiny. Then we move on to scene 7. So we're back with Claudius and Laertes. So by jumping to Horatio, we've allowed a little bit of time to pass, which we know because Claudius says, so now you have to agree that I wasn't in the wrong because Hamlet was trying to kill me, not Polonius. So that statement makes it clear that they have sat down and had a long discussion about exactly how Polonius died. So Laertes says, yep, I believe that, but if Hamlet was really trying to kill you and not Polonius, then why didn't you kill Hamlet? And Claudius says, well, there's basically 2 reasons. Firstly, I love Gertrude and Gertrude loves Hamlet, so I couldn't kill him. And then he says, well, I also couldn't kill him because Hamlet is so well loved by the people. If I acted against Hamlet either legally by taking him to the courts or sort of just looking after it on my own, then the people would blame me for what happened. So you can see here he says that the general people dip his faults in their affection. So they take all of the problems in his personality and they coat them in their love for him. So their emotions there are getting the better of them. And then there's another simile, like a spring that turns wood to stone. It converts his problems to graces. So he's saying it's a bit unfair. I can't act against him because he's so well loved by the people that their emotion overtakes their reason, and they don't want him to be punished because they love him. So then Laertes says, oh, so that's how I lost my father and my sister. And Claudius says, well, I will definitely help you with your revenge. A messenger comes in and tells them that there are letters from Hamlet. Claudius is surprised because obviously he thinks that Hamlet is on his way to England to die. And so then Claudius reads out the letter from Hamlet in front of Laertes. So he says, Hamlet says, I am set naked on your kingdom. Tomorrow I shall beg leave to see you. So it's quite a short to the point letter, but notice that he's used the word naked. He actually just means destitute, as in he doesn't have any money because he's given it to the pirates. But it's also quite a symbolic word. Nudity perhaps suggests that he could be newborn, so the idea that his determination to act and get his revenge finally means that he's newborn, or perhaps it symbolises his total isolation from all around him. So you can take that in either a positive or a negative light, depending on your interpretation of Hamlet, whether he's alone and lonely and sad at this point, or whether his determination to act is, something that has allowed him to be reborn. And so then Claudius is sort of like, what's going on? How can he possibly have come back? And then Claudius is exclaiming about the fact that he's naked and says that Hamlet has also said in a postscript that he's alone. So again, that could be indicative of his confidence, that he's willing to try and lure Claudius into a trap by emphasising vulnerability, or it could literally just be about his vulnerability. So then he says to Laertes, can you advise me what's going on? And Laertes says, no, I don't know, I have no idea what's going on. But he says, I'm glad that he's coming back. His existence is a sickness in my heart. So that imagery of disease is coming up again. And revenge is going to be the cure for this sickness. So then Claudius says, I've got a plan. Are you willing to put up with it? And Laertes says, sure, as long as your plan isn't for me to do nothing, I'm not doing nothing. And Claudius says, let's kill him so it looks like an accident so we don't get blamed. And Laertes says, no problem, but I'd like to be the one to kill him. And Claudius is like, sure, I'm happy for you to be the one to kill him. Hamlet is jealous of your skill with the sword. And then they go on a while, and I'm going to skip through it really quickly. Basically, they're just saying that there was a man who came and visited the Danish court 2 months ago. Now, the timing of that is quite interesting because, of course, we are a little bit unsure about exactly how long it's been since the beginning of the play and since King Hamlet died. Hamlet himself, at the meta-theatrical device, the mousetrap, said that it was 2 months. Ophelia said it was 4 months, and we're not quite sure exactly how much time has passed since then. Probably just 1 day, because Hamlet went immediately to see his mother after the play ended, and then by the next morning he'd been sent to England for killing Polonius. So less than a week will have passed since they've actually seen the play, but then we really don't know how long it's been between King Hamlet's death and the play getting put on. So who knows if this 2 months ago, when this swordman came and visited the court, whether that was before or after King Hamlet's death. Anyway, basically this amazing Norman sword fighter came and talked about how amazing you are, and Laertes is like, oh yeah, I know the guy that you're talking about. And Claudius is like, yeah, well, he reckons you're a really good sword fighter, and Hamlet was totally jealous. And Laertes is like, what's your point? And then Claudius says, did you really love your father, or do you just have the appearance of sorrow? So that comes back to that whole appearance versus reality theme. He's asking Laertes if he's just a face without a heart, if he can't act on his emotions. So you can see that Claudius is pretty clearly manipulating Laertes here, so that Laertes will be emotional and will react without much reason. He'll just trust Claudius. So basically, Claudius goes into detail there and says that over time, it's easy to forget how much you originally loved someone. Time heals wounds. And he says that that's like a disease when you forget that you love someone. So again, we're coming back to that disease imagery. And then refers to the situation as an ulcer. So again, there's that disease imagery coming out again. But in the middle there, he says that we would do, so the thing that we want to do, we should do when we would. So we should do it as soon as we can. So it's pretty similar to Hamlet's situation. It's a pretty strong comment on his situation. So that line there basically just means if you aren't quick to act, then you won't end up bothering because you won't, enough time will pass that you'll stop caring about the problem. So perhaps it's a comment there on Hamlet's slowness. And then he says, as a son, you have an obligation to your father. What are you prepared to do for it? And Laertes says, I'm willing to cut his throat in the church. So it's his total focus on revenge and his complete disregard for morality in the act of getting revenge. And if you cast your mind back to Act 3, Scene 3, that's where we have Hamlet choose not to kill Claudius when he thinks Claudius is praying because it's going to send him to heaven. So we can see a really strong contrast there between Hamlet, who's not willing to kill Claudius in the church, and Laertes, who wants to kill Hamlet in a church. And I just skipped over there, I'll just go back to it. That Claudius says that more than words is required to show the love for the dead father. And so then Claudius agrees with Laertes, revenge should have no bounds, you shouldn't worry about morality when you're getting revenge. And then he basically just says, we're going to organise a fencing match. Hamlet is so jealous of your skills that he'll want to compete against you to prove he's better, and then you can kill him then. And Laertes says, oh, good plan. I'm going to put some poison on my sword just in case I can't kill him just with the sword. And then Claudius says, oh, good idea. And then just in case that doesn't work, we better have a backup plan because otherwise we might get the blame. So let's get a poisoned drink. Make sure that you fight really energetically so that he gets thirsty, so that if you can't kill him with your poisoned sword, he can drink the poisoned drink. So personally, it's getting a little bit ridiculous, but whatever, that's fine. Then the Queen comes in and she very bluntly and straightforwardly says, your sister's drowned, Laertes. And Laertes can't really react to that because he's just seen her alive. So he's just sort of like, what? And then Gertrude goes into it in more detail. Basically, she just says that Ophelia was playing with some flowers. She either fell or got into the lake and then didn't notice that she was in the river, in the brook, and just kept singing to herself until her clothes got all soaked with water and dragged her under. And she didn't do anything to try and save herself. She just drowned. So you'll notice there that we've got that continuation of the flower imagery. So the idea of the flowers being taken to the graves, being corrupted by the situation. And you'll notice as well that when she doesn't do anything to try and save herself once she's fallen into the water, Gertrude points out that that means that she's lacking reason, that she's like a creature. So again, we see that idea that if you don't have intellect, you are basically an animal. So then Laertes is like, so you're sure she's dead? Gertrude's like, yep, definitely dead. And Laertes says, I'm not going to cry because you've just drowned in water, so crying is just going to put more water on you. And he says that he's going to get revenge for her death as well. and he leaves. And then Claudius is pretty exasperated by this because he says that he had to work really hard to calm Laertes down, which indicates the extent of his manipulation. So we've suspected this whole scene that Claudius has been manipulating Laertes, and now it's quite clear that he definitely has been.